Hey guys, what's going on? Today we're going to talk about another aspect of the COVID-19 virus that I didn't talk about before. The previous video was just talking about the government and media's lies about these stats and their arguments to their lies, how they twist the stats, whatever. We're not going to talk about that today. What we're going to talk about is the economic view of this virus. Now, automatically, as soon as you say that, people will jump on you and say, you want all the old people to die? You care about money more than the children? You care about the jobs and the economy and just your well-being more than the people that are going to die from this virus? And I'm like, no. No, I don't. Thanks for putting words in my mouth. Thanks for strawmanning me. There are very few people who can argue without strawmanning nowadays. That seems to be 90% plus arguments is just strawmanning someone else's position, and the other person saying, wait a second, I didn't say this. I didn't say that. What I really said was XYZ, and then they just go back and forth with those things, and that's the entirety of the argument. The thing is, I don't understand why people don't understand this, but jobs in the economy are people's lives. If someone dies because the economy's failing, they lost their job, they're homeless, they commit suicide, they abuse drugs, whatever, because of losing their job because of the quarantine, what difference is that than a COVID death? A death is a death. I don't understand why you think that, thousands of people can die from the economic downturn. I don't care. I just want to save COVID-19 deaths. Well, a life is a life, so why are you differentiating between the two? Like, why does it matter? If you want to save lives, that's the thing I constantly hear about people. It's about saving lives whenever they're justifying quarantine, justifying all of these horrible infringements on our rights, these horrible infringements on the Constitution, controlling every single aspect of our daily lives. They constantly whine and whinge. It's about saving people's lives. Well, this is what I'm talking about here. Saving the economy and people's jobs and businesses is saving people's lives. That's how you live, is by having a job. Businesses are jobs. You can't survive without a job unless you are unemployed forever like some lazy prick. But barring that, you have to get an income from a job to survive. So let's go through a couple of articles, shall we? A double recession. Economies risk debt crisis after stimulus spending. Key points. The debt incurred over time for coronavirus stimulus spending could mean a deeper crisis and default risk for some countries, according to a recent economic report. The current wave of debt accumulation, which started in 2010, well, no, actually, we've been running up a debt way before that, but I guess we accelerated a lot in 2010. That is true. Obama spent way more than Bush could ever think of, but that's beside the point. Is the largest, fastest, most broad-based increase in global borrowing since the 1970s. The economic meltdown brought on by the coronavirus pandemic has government deploying historically vast fiscal spending packages to support millions of their citizens and businesses. This spending is necessary to support economies. Officials agree on that much, except they don't. That's another point. I can go into a whole other argument about why stimulus spending and government spending is bad. I've covered that so many times. I mean, I don't want to go into that on a tangent. But even on this specific stimulus package, economics do not agree on that. There are a lot of them that say that's bad, and it is bad. But that's not what we're talking about here. But the debt incurred over time can mean a deeper crisis and a double-down recession for some countries. Debt crisis is coming. For now, governments are ramping up fiscal spending to fight the epidemic, maintain basic economic architecture, and keep workers in their jobs. As a result, fiscal deficits will rise sharply in the coming years. Now, the problem is, they're not even doing that. The basic economic architecture and workers keeping their jobs, the U.S. is specifically failing in that. So we're spending all of this money and we're not even doing what we're trying to do. It's just putting on a Band-Aid on a giant fucking gash in your leg. Like, yeah, technically it does help a tiny bit in stopping the blood loss, but overall it doesn't solve the problem. And the other problem is, if we were maintaining a surplus for decades and decades and decades and doing sound economic policies that, again, take too long to go into, let's say in an alternate reality we weren't spending debt out of our asses for decades and decades and decades, and let's say by this point, right, in January of 2020, we had a huge surplus of money, and then this shit happens, it would make more sense economically speaking, say, hey, we have this huge surplus, let's use that for a stimulus package. Like, on principle, I wouldn't agree with it still, because I'm a libertarian, I don't agree in government handouts and huge government spending, but at least it would be more lucid of a conversation. It would make more sense. Like, yeah, I don't really like it, but yeah, we've been doing good for a while, so let's buy it. It's like, as a family, You're saving up a bunch of money and then you buy something stupid. It's fun or whatever. I don't know. I'm just thinking of examples. Like, yeah, when you're in debt, you wouldn't buy that. You wouldn't buy a giant plasma TV. But let's say you don't watch TV that much and the rest of your family does. Like, yeah, we've been good last couple of years. Let's splurge and buy this thing. That would make more sense. But we don't do that, do we? We normally, our normal operations is rapidly rising fiscal deficits. We are in a J curve with how much we are spending in this country already, even before this crap happening. This just accelerated it even more. We are already exponentially increasing the amount of money we're spending, and now we are exponentially increasing our exponential increase. Like, you don't understand how bad this is, how bad our deficit spending is. It already is in a J curve, and now we are J curving the J curve. We don't go back down, unfortunately. Already in early January, before any country imposed coronavirus lockdowns, the World Bank warned of the risk by a fresh global debt crisis. It described the current wave of debt accumulation would start in 2010. Yeah, we already said that. In the first half of 2019, global debt surged by 7.5 trillion, hitting a new record of more than $250 trillion. The US is not the only country that is just driving itself into the ground with how much money it's spending. Almost every single other country is doing that too, because almost every single other country is run by liberals. There are very few countries that are run by conservatives and actually have a surplus at the end of the year. With no sign of a slowdown, because everyone is J-curving at this point, we expect the global debt load to exceed $255 trillion in 2019, largely driven by the US and China. This is before the year is over, and this is before anyone was talking about coronavirus. So this is going to make it even worse. They're expecting the global economy to shrink by 3% this year. Contrast that with January, they're expecting it to grow by 3%. So that's a difference of 6% globally. And so 6% is no big deal. It's no big deal. It's only 6%. That takes huge tolls of the global economy. The global economy is a conglomerate, a huge system that very few people can understand how big it is. 6% of that is a huge fucking slice. Talks about how southern European countries could be hit first because Italy got hit hard. Spain never recovered from 2008. Spain was suffering well before this crap, and it was one of the hardest hit ones. Like, just none of this is good. None of this is good news at all. Then it ends with the U.S. Small Business Rescue Loan Program ran out of money the last couple of days. Good luck with that. So the government ran out of spending when all it does to get money to spend is either print money, tax, and yet still they managed to run out of money. Well, do you wonder which option we chose, either to just make fake cash or to raise taxes? Guess how we paid for this $2 trillion coronavirus package? We just printed money. We just made 2 coins and said they were each $1 trillion a piece, and then we put it in this fake account, and then boom, magically we have $2 trillion just to give to everyone. Even though a small portion of that $2 trillion actually directly went to Americans, the vast majority of it went to programs that had nothing to do with coronavirus, like the Kennedy Center, for example, or NASA. Like, what the fuck does that have to do with coronavirus? No, they stuff in all of this. The politicians say, oh, hey, I wanted something, I've been trying to get for a while. Let me put it in this bill. And they never read the bill, and they just pass it. So just printing $2 trillion worth of money, that coin isn't actually worth $1 trillion. It's fake. That's how you cause inflation. You're printing out all this money that has no mineral base, like it's not based on gold, it's not based on silver, anything like that. It's just, you just print money and just give it away. That's how you cause inflation. That's how you cause Venezuela. The UN warns an economic downturn could kill hundreds of thousands of children in 2020. Now, I know I'm playing by the same rule book that liberals constantly use. Think of the children. Why wouldn't you enact gun control? Think of the children. Why wouldn't you burn the Constitution and take away your rights and take away your freedom of speech and take away your right to speedy and fair trial? Think of the children. Think of the children. Think of the children. That's what we constantly hear from them. Well, now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to flip back on you and see how annoying it is that the UN warns that the economic downturn could kill hundreds of thousands of children in 2020. How many people have been killed overall? I forget the world number. How many have been killed in the US? Like 40,000 something? And now they're estimating it's going to be 60,000 total. So We're saving a small amount of Americans because only the mortality rate's only 1 to 3% and is under 1% for the vast majority of Americans. We're saving them. In turn, we're killing hundreds of thousands of children. I thought you guys cared about the children. I thought you cared about all these brown people in all these poor countries. That's what you constantly whinge about. Oh, but now you just don't care. But what a surprise. What a surprise. They're like, it's worth it. It's worth it to kill all those children if it means saving 0.3% of the population. Just, are you kidding me? Not only will children die overseas because they will starve, people here will starve too, if freedom isn't restored. News over the past few days carried reports that the government of Michigan has decreed that those living in the state shall not garden. Remember, in the previous video I talked about all of these rights being taken away that they say is because for the safety of coronavirus, but it has nothing to do with coronavirus, like freedom of speech online and right to bear arms. They're shutting down hundreds and hundreds of gun stores around the country. Why? They say because of corona. It's like, but what does that actually have to do with corona? Never received an answer. No one could ever tell me an answer about any of those things. Not only they're doing stuff like that, but they're doing stuff like you can't buy gardening supplies, seeds. Those are non-essential. Wait, so you're telling me that I can't go outside to go to the store unless it's like I'm dying. You're limiting the amount of people in stores, so it takes a very long time because you have to wait outdoors. I have to be in contact with dozens, if not hundreds of people in this store because everyone is going to those stores because only the grocery stores are open at this point. Why can't I just buy seeds and grow my own food at home? Therefore, social distancing. You're putting more people at risk when you're forcing them to go to the store to buy food instead of letting them grow their own food in their backyard or on their farm. It makes no sense. It's like that video of those police officers. This guy's jogging on a beach completely by himself. The beach is completely empty and he's jogging half a mile away from anyone else. And these police officers run across the beach to arrest him for breaking social distancing. I'm like, you put him more at risk by going up to him and touching him to arrest him than if you just let him run by himself. That's how absurd our officials are acting, and everyone's supporting all these things. Just no comment, doesn't matter. Oh, it's just a one-off thing. Oh, it doesn't happen that often. So what? He got arrested, he got a fine. What's the convenience? What's the inconvenience? He just got mildly inconvenient versus people dying of coronavirus. So now they're forcing people to be more at risk for the virus. If you're so scared of this virus, why don't you let people buy seeds online, for example, or let them go once, get everything they need for their garden, and come back home, and then they stay there, and they can grow their own food. Isn't that social distancing? Isn't that saving lives, as you guys constantly complain about? No. No one sees the absurdity. Well, some people do, obviously, but the people supporting quarantine don't say anything about it. So you can get an abortion, but you can't get a lawnmower in Michigan. That's amazing. Whitmer's headline-grabbing totalitarianism aside, the worldwide shutdown of anything deemed non-essential by know-nothing government bureaucrats is now causing the world to rush towards a catastrophic famine. There are already millions of newly unemployed people who once lived paycheck to paycheck. They are now lining up for desperately needed supplies from food banks. In one example, already on March 30th, the Pittsburgh Tribune Review reported that hundreds of cars have lined up for food at one Pittsburgh area food bank. Organizers were prepared to serve 1,700 families, 100 more than last week when some people were turned away. Food itself, however, may be harder to get as farmers, unable to sell their products, face agricultural catastrophe. Dairy farmers in Wisconsin are dumping thousands of gallons of milk that they no longer sell. On April 1st, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel reported that one dairy operation, Golden E Dairy, opened the spigot and started flushing its milk into a wastewater lagoon 22,000 pounds a day through next Monday. It's not just one dairy farm that's being affected. This isn't an isolated case. I'm not cherry-picking examples to support my argument. This is happening across the country. Everyone around the industry is feeling distressed right now. U.S. farmers had destroyed millions of pounds of perishable foods like tomatoes, lettuce, and green beans because growers lost a vast number of customers after the coronavirus pandemic struck. Blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to read the article in its entirety because it takes too long to read every single article in its entirety. We're going to be here for like an hour. But you get the point. And it ends with, if this disruption is allowed to continue much longer, the risk of famine and mass death due to starvation increases substantially. Again, dying from famine, how is that any less worse than dying from coronavirus? Why do these pro-quarantine people not give a fucking flaming shit about the unintended consequences of the policies they are proposing and just saying, you don't believe in science, why don't you save lives? The people pushing these quarantine, the vast majority of people pushing these quarantine rules are insulated from these problems. They're well-to-do, they're well off, they have enough food, they don't live paycheck to paycheck. They have cushy jobs that allow them to work from home, or they're furloughed, meaning they know they're going to get their job back, or they can, they don't have to work but do whatever, they're just paid to stay at home. They're not facing these problems of these policies. And they get to talk down to people who don't have that privilege and say, oh, you better take shutting down the economy, otherwise you hate children and you want old people to die. You're not in their shoes. You're not the ones that are facing defaulting on their mortgages or not being able to pay rent, not being able to buy food for their families. What a privilege it is to be insulated from this whole problem and talk down to people who are like, hey, we really need the economy to open back up. We were already struggling before this, and now, we got a stimulus. That was cool. That helped us out for a month. The same problem's going to happen next month. We're still going to need food next month. We're still going to need money for rent. These are basic necessities. You force the government to shut down my job. What the fuck am I supposed to do? Oh, just take it, peasant. You have to quarantine. Stay home to save lives. What are you, a bigot? Congress is bankrupting America. Well, tell me something I didn't know. Tell me something that's new, right? 2 weeks ago, President Donald Trump signed the largest stimulus bill in U.S. history, more than $2 trillion. They passed it 96-0. They didn't even bother. The House didn't even bother with a formal vote. It was literally like the easiest thing ever passed. They just did it. At the White House, a reporter asked the president, pointing out that the bill included $25 million for the Kennedy Center for some reason, shouldn't that money be going to masks? No, because the government doesn't actually give a shit about you. All these politicians saw an opportunity to put in their little bill, in this giant fucking bill, that only a small percentage of that $2 trillion was actually the stimulus bill that went into Americans' bank accounts. The vast majority of it was politicians just giving money to themselves, giving money to businesses that give money to them. Like, it was just a vast deployment of wealth. That they called it, oh, this is to save people. Well, then why is 1% of it was actually money going directly to Americans? The bill included $25 million for congressional salaries. Wow. Hey, this is an opportunity to give myself a raise. Let me put in this stimulus bill. $50 million for institute, a museum, and library services. All the museums are closed right now. Why are you giving them $50 million? Can't that fucking wait? Only a few politicians were wary. Representative Thomas Massey complained he wasn't even allowed to speak against the bill. They just rammed through this thing without any dialogue or opposition whatsoever. Representative Alex Mooney asked, how do you pay for it? Borrow it from China? Borrow it from Russia? Are we going to print the money? These are good questions. Our national debt is already at $24 trillion. It will jump, percentage-wise, to where Greece's debt was shortly before unemployment there hit 27%. Greece was bailed out by the European Union, but the United States cannot be bailed out by others. So how will we pay off our debt? There are really three options: raise taxes, print money, or default. All three of those options suck, which is why the fourth option is to not spend as much money so you don't have to do one of these three things. Raising taxes, people are already burdened by extremely high taxes. The lower percentage of people paying taxes pay close to 25% of their entire income in taxes. Now that differs from state to state. I know in my state that's the case. But combining all the taxes they pay, it's close to 25%. That's not even talking about the middle and upper, who pay more than half, close to 75% of all the money they make in taxes. Print money, we've already said why printing money is a bad idea. It just raises inflation. It's just fake money. It doesn't mean anything. It makes the currency less valuable. That's why McDonald's, a burger used to cost 10 cents and now it costs like $3 or $4. Inflation, everything, the money is worth less, so businesses have to charge more because of it. Your wage, which hasn't moved in like 30 years, is now, you can buy less with it. because everything is more expensive, but your wage hasn't risen, because the currency is worthless, because of inflation, because of printing out all this money and it's not based on anything. Before, when the US printed money, they had gold in their reserves. Like, this dollar is tied to gold we have in Fort Knox or something. It actually has value. You could take that dollar, not just $1, you can take $100 and get $100 worth of gold from the treasury. This is actually worth something. Now it's just fake money. It's just a piece of paper. It's not based on anything. I can write a piece of paper, this is $10,000. That's basically what the government's doing. Or default. Default, again, I explained this many times before in many videos. Defaulting, there's a pie chart of how much money we spend every year. A huge chunk of it is just paying the interest of the debt we already have. It's like on a credit card, when you spend $100 on it and you spend $40 on the debt you already have, because you already have thousands of dollars or whatever, $100, whatever, already spent. So you're really spending $140 a month. The $100 on the money you actually spent plus the $40 just on the interest. So that's what we're doing with our debt. A huge chunk of the money we spend every year is just paying off the interest on the debt we already have. That chunk of the pie chart is growing more and more and more every year as we spend more and more and more, and we never pay it off. Eventually, that pie chart is going to be eaten up entirely by the interest. So that's like you max out your credit card so much that you don't even have enough money to pay the minimum balance on that credit card. You know what happens? Boom. Your credit score is fucked. You crapped out. The bank calls you, like, boom, you missed your minimum payment. All these bad things are going to happen to you. But think of that on a national scale. The U.S. cannot even pay the interest on the debt it already has. That's when our economy crashes even more than 2008. Even more than it already is. It's already crashing. And then we default on our debt. Boom, that's just going to... It's going to J-curve the J-curve. It's going to exponentially increase the exponentially increase. The unemployment we see is going to triple. The inflation we see is going to triple. The suffering that people are going to suffer is going to at least triple. Because it's going to be way worse in 2008. It's going to be like 1930s level. We have piled deficit upon deficit, mortgaging our future and our children's future, warned Ronald Reagan. We must act today to preserve tomorrow. And then he proceeded for 8 years of running up the debt. Bill Clinton said we've got to deal with this big long-term debt problem. To be fair, he is the last president that had a surplus. Barack Obama called driving up the national debt irresponsible, then proceeded to do exactly that. Donald Trump complained that Obama doubled the national debt, which he did. But now, under the Trump presidency, our debt will grow even faster than doubling the national debt. So this problem has been going on for a very, very long time, ever since basically World War II. We've been running up a national debt that we cannot pay. Eventually, it's going to catch up with us. So far, the deficit spending hasn't done enormous harm, but it will. You can only stretch a rubber band so far until it breaks. Again, when you're paying $40 a month on your credit card debt, that's no big deal in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, it's annoying to pay $40 a month every single month, but that's not going to break your budget. But when you spend so fucking much that it's hundreds and hundreds of dollars, then that's when it becomes a problem. Our debt will wreck our children's lives, yet today politicians mostly talk about spending more. How bad is our economy right now? This is even before we crashed on our national debt, which I looked up. I can't even figure out when we're going to break on our national debt because it's accelerating so fast that with all this crap going on, no one's been able to write about it. Last time I checked, which was several years ago, he was supposed to default in next decade, in the 2030s. I know that has been accelerated. That doomsday clock is getting much, much closer to the present day than then because of all the massive spending that Donald Trump has done even before this coronavirus shit. There are 22 million Americans out of work. 22 million unemployment claims. That's close to 1 in 10 Americans now do not have work. That is how bad this is. There's a GIF you can look up on Google. It shows a chart going up and down of weekly unemployment claims. And obviously in 2008 you saw a spike and then it goes back down and it's kind of normal. And then once this hit, it goes straight up and it leaves every single other bump so small you could barely see it. That's how astronomically high the weekly unemployment starting in March was. It is literally 1,000 times worse than the job unemployment in 2008. And we thought that was bad. It was really bad back then. This pales in comparison to how bad this is. The vast majority of Americans have no savings and they live paycheck to paycheck normally. This was even under Donald Trump's strong economy, which it was a lot stronger than anything under Obama. It was a reprieve for a lot of Americans, but yet still we were doing that bad that most people did not have savings or less than $400 worth of savings and still live paycheck to paycheck. Now we have 22 million people out of work. We have, I think we report 36 million out of healthcare. Good luck getting coronavirus treatment when you don't have healthcare. What's going to happen to them? What about their lives? Don't their lives matter? I thought it was about saving lives. Why are we doing policies that take away people's healthcare if you care about saving lives? Coronavirus's economic damage is exponentially greater than its health risk to the public. If the virus does directly affect your life, it is most likely to be stopping you from going to work, forcing your employer to make you redundant, or bankrupting your business. The vast majority of people out there do not have coronavirus, who do not know anyone who has coronavirus. There are some people, like I know of a person who knows a person who has coronavirus. That's pretty distant. The vast majority of people will not get this virus, nor will anyone they know get this virus. I'm not saying that no one will. Don't put words in my mouth. Don't strawman me. I know people are dying. I know people get it. I know people who got it, okay? But percentage-wise, it is astronomically smaller than the people affected by the economic downturn that these policies are implementing. Every single person in this country is affected by that, 100%. In different regards, in different aspects, but still 100%. Only a tiny sliver of people actually get the virus or know someone who has the virus. The trillions of dollars wiped from financial markets this week will just be beginning if the government does not step in. And if President Trump continues to stumble in his handling of the situation, I don't care about that shit. Him and Joe Biden are both retarded. Blah, 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 blah. Just as important as fighting the virus, if not more important, is vaccinating our economies against the incoming pandemic of panic. Human suffering can come in the form of illness and death, but can also be experienced as in not being able to pay your bills or losing your home. Small businesses in particular are struggling as supply chains dry up, leaving them without products or essential materials. The stakes are higher this time because there seems to be a coordinated effort by Democrats to economically hurt many Western countries and warn them away from the aggressive trade policies that Trump has so enthusiastically adopted. This is what I think is the whole crux of the issue. The Democrats knew they could not beat Trump on an evil playing field. His economy was too strong. People were doing so good that they would not vote against him. They knew they had to take away his, pun intended, his trump card was the economy. It's like, yeah, I know I'm rude. Yeah, I know I'm crass and I say things that make Karens shrivel up in fear. But are you doing better? Are you making more money? Are you able to buy more things? Able to go on vacation? You have more in your savings. My economy is strong. It's much stronger than Obama's, okay? Boom. Shut the fuck up. This is my trump card. They had to take that away from him. So what do? They hype up this fear of this virus in order to justify doing policies that will crash the economy. And they are doing exactly that. Now, come November, Trump's chance of re-election is much less now. Because his trump card, the economy, is gone. He has to defend his policies on other grounds. He has to defend his handling of this virus. He has to handle the other things that, again, are outside the scope of this video. In conclusion, I know this was a much longer video than my normal ones, but there's so many aspects to go over. And this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to just the economic issues of this virus. I read about I just skimmed these articles, I didn't read them in entirety, and yet still it's about half an hour. We will end with, to survive these shifts, the US, UK, and others will need to protect the future of their businesses, large and small, and look for opportunities to benefit from the new economic world order, not deny it. Ignoring these changes will be even more damaging than the flu pandemic, and the coronavirus pandemic for that matter. Everything. If you stop the coronavirus from spreading as much as it did, so less people died, but yet like half of your population is homeless and on the streets because they can't pay rent, they can't pay mortgage, they don't have jobs, what have you achieved? Good job. Yet you got people not sick, and now they're dying in mass from starvation and being homeless. a death is a death. There's still tens of thousands of people dying. You just shifted it from one cause to the other. That's not fixing anything.